Hey guys, Veebat here with another V Plays, and yeah, we got it. We got the D-5 Stuka, and if you can hear it in my voice, I don't sound nearly as enthused about it as you might suspect. The thing is, I wasn't actually thinking this aircraft was going to be amazing or anything. It really is a one-trick pony, and its one trick is going to be the absolute nuke sitting underneath the fuselage. The thing is, I wanted to see if this could single strike a mine in one pass. Well, single strike the main structure, I should say, because if you only got one bomb, you're not taking the whole site. You're probably just going to take one section of ground targets. That's pretty critical. So this plane is really here to get the special sites. This is the special site assassin. This is what this thing was built to do. So we are going to do precisely that. We are going to dive on that center structure down there, or the really big important one, and we're going to do our utmost to see if we can destroy it with a single bomb. So let's go ahead and get that golden ring of justice that we like to see. We're going to start kicking the nose down so we slow down our approach, get that dive bomb angle, turn gold, drop the nuke, look at explosions because we're cool, and we absolutely blew that thing up with a single drop, which is what you would expect, right? We did it, guys. We successfully took out that big structure. But if I was alone, that would have been a significant amount of the capture. It would have been like, what, over a third or something like that? But it isn't enough. I need help. This is a problem, right? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, see you, Lucy. My goodness, I'm not even going to repair the pilot. It's not even worth it. We'll wait for this reload. I found that this plane's base damage of 8,000 is not enough. I decided to put Demo Expert on it. I also decided that wasn't enough. So what I ended up doing was I put on the bomb sight and rolled for increased damage on bombs. That is what I was hoping for. I wanted to see if I could maximize the potential to be able to take out a site in a single pass. We managed to pick up the zone. Cool, cool, cool. I see you, F2A. Can these forward guns do any decent damage? The answer is yes, they actually can. At this tier, being able to do nearly 200 damage a second is nice, but it isn't enough to be able to get these guys because the guns are super inaccurate. Most 20mm cannons are going to get about 2.5 degrees of auto aim and have a dispersion of about 0.55. That is pretty typical. We're actually going to dive under this guy so he doesn't kill us. I see you. Not today, son. Oh, he's still on us. Okay, fine. We only get 1 degree of auto aim. 1 degree. 1 degree of auto aim. Absolutely pathetic. But we also get another insult to injury here because we only get a 0.6 dispersion. So super inaccurate. This is like a total overkill, and we kind of suspected that, but we'll do what we can here to help with this site. Cool, got that. That's all the tents, I believe, there. There's only 2 tents over here. We'll take those. Okay, our ally got it. Cool, cool, cool. Let's help over here. 2 planes shooting at this should be helpful, and still don't have the zone. Because we gotta kill a plane, or at the very least, a couple of these AA sites. Let's go, 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 go. Not enough. Oh, our ally got it. Nice. Sweet. Oh, we did. We lit it on fire. We got fire breathing. Guys, I know that sounds really like a surprise in Veebat's voice about lighting a building on fire. I actually rolled gun sights, the collimator I should say, as well as the gas-operated action to get an extra 15% chance of fire. And that, I think, is the first time I have seen fire on a ground target since I set this aircraft up. Okay. Not even going to play with that guy. He's got light machine guns, much more consistent performance on that. I'm going to start heading towards our military base because it's gonna be a minute, and I'm only gonna be a hindrance to my team if I go into the enemy airfield. Let's go over here and be a helpful member of our team and go after that main structure, because at this tier I will say it's probably super beneficial to take out those special sites because it's a lot more difficult to do. Is he really potentially going to die to this guy? Do I need to dogfight the GA? No, the GA is dogfighting me. Okay, you get away from me now. Not interested. Don't do it. Don't do it. Nuke out. Kill me now. Okay, sweet. We got more than a third. More than a third. It's actually a pretty decent amount of damage. Woo! We'll talk more about the damage potential on this bomb, but it's not as effective against the mines as I initially thought it would be. Also, the long reload makes it very difficult to have consistent performance. Oh, go team. Vic, you're my hero. You're saving me. I've had so many videos of me trying to bomb sites and just getting absolutely decimated by folks because this plane gets attacked a lot and it gets destroyed a lot because it's very weak. I mean, this is a more interesting version of the 87G because it has the bomb. It's more consistent with history, right? I mean, yes, the G was very popular and those Do-37s were pretty dang cool. Made it much more effective at being able to take out tanks and armored ground targets. But the reason we all wanted this is because of the absolute nuke that it carries and being this dive bomber. However, it's not really a dive bomber. I mean, yes, I can dive at really steep angles. That's kind of the whole point here. But it doesn't get the Jericho horn or any of that fun stuff. More than enough to be able to do what I just did there. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. No, 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 no. Leave me alone. Let me get out of the zone before you kill me. Because that's the inevitability of this plane, is to die to aircraft like the Focke-Wulf. No, no, no. Get it down this... take his pilot out. There we go. Less consistent damage by you now. See ya. T. Ooh, the gunner, the engine's out. Come on, gunner. Come on, pilot. And stall. Ugh. So with a really bad auto aim, I really should be zooming in to be able to get those guns on target a little bit more consistently. But it is squall line, so we are going to dive, and it doesn't matter. Game's over. We'll throw up the GG, and then we will head back to the hangar, and we will discuss this bomb damage a little bit more. This plane is nothing but a flying bomb. I do not think it is worth the frustration a lot of people are going through to try and unlock it. I've seen a lot of rage in chat. I've seen people team killing me because they said I was stealing their kills and they're on a mission. It just drives me insane that that's the environment that this kind of creates. So if you find yourself slipping into that segment, chill out. This thing isn't that great. It's going to be a hangar queen. I'll specialize it. I'll do another video with the increased reload, the increased bomb damage. But my point is, it's a total one-trick pony. It might do well in a flight with somebody if they're flying in a multi-role. They're like, all right, I'll shoot down some planes. I'll take out some of the AA sites. I'll get your 6 if somebody gets on you. And you take out those special sites for me, please. Gotcha. At this tier, those are a real pain in the butt. Even if I were flying in my IL-2 mod, I get the 2 bombs, I get my rockets, I get my cannons and machine gun combo. I can take it out eventually, and I can still do some work around the site, but I'm going to be more effective. I have better armor, I have more hit points, I've got a better tail gunner. This aircraft, it's like the 87G. I mean, it's a little bit more maneuverable. It has the same altitude performance. Its survivability is actually a little bit less. This has 550 hit points compared to the 600 you get on the 87G. And I find the 37s to be easier to use on the G model. With the D-5, the 220s are inconsistent. I have shot down aircraft with it, but it's not consistent. You really have to zoom into the reticle. You have to plan the lead on your targets. And because it has very little auto aim, that means you got to be dead on your target. You're not even going to get some hit whiskers as you try to hit scan to get the optimal damage trajectory. I'm just not even going to get the light damage. I might hear a couple of hits here and there, but we didn't do a lot of damage to aircraft. I mean, it's in here, right? Like, I think they show you damage to aircraft. 382 for an aircraft that does 192 damage per second, and honestly, most of that was coming from the tail gunner anyways. We did manage to capture 3 sectors, although we did get shot down, and we took out 2 of the special ground targets. Honestly, that's probably the best you're going to get most of the time. It just doesn't have that consistent performance, mostly because the reload is so slow, but I do think specialized, it will be a lot better. You see, with the 8,000 base damage, with 8,800, because you better be running Demo Expert if you're flying this plane, you do not have enough oomph to take out that main site at the military base. I have gone up against it, I have dropped on it, and it has left structures alive. It just isn't consistent enough. Maybe if you were to start shooting at it early, but then you're not going to have the optimal bombing angle. You can make it work, I'm sure, if you're a proficient ground attacker. But if you're a proficient ground attacker, what are you doing at tier 5, buddy? Get out of tier 5. You're just trolling newer players. It's not the right thing to do, in my opinion. The only way I was able to consistently destroy those major ground targets, the special sites, was by putting on some extra boost to the damage. We are currently running the bomb site, and we have rolled for 3% increased damage to bombs on our first upgrade after rolling it for improved. That means that our bomb damage is now broken the 9,000 damage barrier of 9,064. That is enough damage that, if dropped perfectly, you can take out the center site of the mine, that big long one. You can actually do it with this. However, it's not consistent. You're probably going to want to put guns on early, maybe take out the 4 smokestacks to reduce the amount of damage area you need to get, and then drop just a little bit towards where that cluster of those main buildings is there, because there's kind of like a cluster of 5 hardened buildings, and you want to take those out. That is going to be your best bet, because I have had very inconsistent results. I have had times where I was able to take out the mine in a single drop with this current setup, and I've had times where I've left 1 or 2 structures remaining. Some of that's probably the inconsistency of the way the bomb drops, because it drops somewhere inside of that circle. Maybe if I was doing a dive bomb angle and I was more careful about it, I could maximize it a little bit more. But again, if you're to that level of perfection playing this game, why are you flying at tier 5? Honestly, I try to steer clear of it. Typically, I'll fly tier 5 episodically at best, but most of the time I find myself flying at tier 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 if I'm willing to go up against a bunch of EF-131 people. But I think the 9,000 barrier is the key in order to make this aircraft effective, getting back to the damage numbers. But if you specialize the platform, which is what we really want, you're going to be able to put on the consumable right here in this slot. The consumable in this slot will increase the damage, which means that if you aren't running the bomb site and you're just going to run the hardened pylon to reduce the reload time, that means that you're going to be able to get 9,680 damage with Demo Expert combined with it. At least that's the math that worked out when I calculated it, because it should be another 10%, or is it, I forget if it's 10% or 7% increase. My point being, you're breaking the 9K barrier without having to do the bomb sites, so you should be able to do most of what you want to do, and the reduced reload time is what we're really after here once we specialize, because while we had a map with 2 military bases, and you can run into maps that have some mines, most of the time you're going to find yourself at tier 5 going up against garrisons and airfields, so there's a lot of medium sites to take out, but now you're talking about volume and you only got 1 bomb, so I'd want to get that reload reduced as much as possible so I could be more effective. That should be your ultimate goal, in my opinion. So, what do I think of the JU-87 D-5 if it hasn't become readily apparent? I think it's just another tier 5 ground attacker. In all honesty, the 87G is technically better in my opinion. This thing is neat. It's gonna be fun for a few battles, but I can't see myself flying this. Well, actually, I take it back. I could see myself flying this consistently because I already feel bad enough flying at tier 5 that if I were to go down to tier 5, since this thing seems to be very balanced as far as premium goes, I think that this might be a plane that I end up flying a bit, but that's why, because it is so balanced. The whole point I'm trying to make here is that this thing isn't worth the frustration. If you find yourself getting emotionally tied to the success of completing these missions, don't, please, because one, the toxicity in the game recently has been very palpable, and at the very least, this is a game you should be having fun. I like that they put this in. I like that they put the missions in, but I see them as an opportunity to have a bit of a change of pace, a nice kind of goal for you to try to drive towards. But I'd be going down those going through this mission tree for the rewards that come on the right-hand side, not because of the reward at the end of the rainbow. It's a nice culmination event, but it's not necessarily worth the time, energy, and frustration that comes into it. Some of you might be asking, hey V, how'd you get through some of the more challenging missions in this game? I'd say most of these missions I like. I like them because they're pretty much going to be time-based. It's like, okay, you got to get a lot of capture points over multiple battles. Okay, well, that's just going to take time. You got to kill 75 air defense aircraft. Okay, that's going to take time. You have to kill a bunch of multi-rolls. You have to get 600,000 damage against ground targets over multiple battles. Awesome. All of these things are totally easy to accomplish. It's those missions that require specific achievements or ones that have to be done in a single battle that are going to be really challenging. One of the ones that I found to be challenging was killing 8 aircraft while defending a zone. You could get lucky and get an airfield in the middle of a map at like a tier 5 battle and get into an overpowered tier 5 turn fighter and just sit there and spin circles and kill enemy aircraft as they came into a zone that you owned in the middle, preferably in a flight, and just absolutely own the center, and hopefully the enemy continues to haplessly chase into your zone. What I found to work well, and I feel really bad about it, is that I took out the DB Spitfire, or as I call it, the D-bag Spitfire, because I feel like it's super cheesy in the fact that you're taking out an already overpowered aircraft, the Spitfire, in the sense that it's extremely versatile and easy to fly, and you're giving it altitude performance. The reason it worked so well for me is I was playing a battle where we had 2 military bases, and once we captured ours, I sat there and shot down bombers and ground attackers, and then when the enemy rolled in with their light fighters and multi-rolls, I was easily able to handle them as well. That's how I achieved that objective. But it didn't take me very long, so I didn't have to fly in a troll aircraft that long. I am very proud to say I never got into a B-29C, nor did I get into an EF-131 to complete any of the captures through ground damage or the ground damage achievement for 600,000 damage against ground targets. I took out ground attackers. I feel as though they're more consistent, and I was just flying at tier 9 in my IL-40, and it worked out great. But you could accomplish it in a multi-role as well if you just take a little bit more time. The other one that a lot of people are worried about is like, oh, a Galubev. How do I get a Galubev? The answer is fly in a flight with somebody. That is always the answer, is fly with a friend and work together, preferably a friend who's just as competent as you are, or perhaps even better than you are. And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up flying with kind of a random player I came across that he had a good match. I had a good match. I missed my Galubev due to losing the battle because the enemy managed to flip all the zones at one time. One of those magical moments where they get a lucky set of shoot downs. But we hopped into a flight, and after a few more attempts, I was able to achieve it in my BVP 210. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Get the BVP 212 or the F-94D or the 262 because they all can equip air-to-air rockets. They have very consistent performance for their tier, and you just be very careful. When you find an opportunity to use the rockets, make sure that you have the skill that increases the increases the potential to fuse on a target. That's going to be this skill right here, the Expert Rocketeer. What it does is it changes it so your rockets will fuse as they get close to a target, so they explode kind of around them. They don't need to all hit directly on the target. It essentially artificially increases the hitbox of the enemy aircraft, which gives you much more consistent performance. I found with light fighters, 2 volleys of the R4M rockets off of a BVP or a 262 is usually more than enough to take it out. And if it's a damaged aircraft, you might be able to get away with a single volley. The BVP reloads in 60 seconds for its rockets. And if you have specialized it, you can go ahead and throw on hardened pylons to reduce it even more, which just makes it more consistent. Get your 3 rocket kills. Do not go into tussling matches. The Galubev requires you to get 3 Rocketeer kills in a single sortie. That means not dying. Survive till the end of the battle, so continue to not die, and win the battle. That's where your wingman comes in. If you do find yourself getting into trouble and somebody's on your 6 and you're losing a dogfight, have them come in and give you a hand. And if you can do this over a airbase that will have a wrench so you can repair your aircraft, gives you increased survivability yet again. It did take 5 or 6 attempts to be able to achieve that, but even if you're inconsistent, just fire all of the rockets. When you get into a head-on with something, take it out. I don't care if it's an air defense aircraft, like a heavy, typically they like to head on you when you're going over like a garrison. Be the first in, get them to go into a head-on engagement. Dab that R key 3 times, jerk the stick, pull out of the engagement so you're rocket, turn. And you can do that at fairly big distances. In fact, I'll pull up my BVP real quick. And there she is. The R4M rockets have a range of 4,560 feet. Make sure you pay attention to that range. Also be aware that a target is typically closing with you, so they're actually shrinking that distance as you fire. So if you fired at 5,000 and they were closing at a decent rate, they're probably going to run into your rockets by approaching your launch. So I fire pretty early. I fire at like, usually 4,000. As soon as I see 4 tick over, like even if it's 4,800, I'm like rocket, jerk the stick and get out of the way. And let them slam it into your wall that you just created in the air. That's 1. Now I wait 60 seconds and I do it again. And that is how I achieve that. So if you're worried about it, that's how to do it. Yeah, that's it. Stuka D-5, not very impressed. Don't recommend putting a ton of effort into it. It reminds me of XFY1 video. The XFY1 is such a weird aircraft. When we were doing the Christmas event, I think it was last year, it was like, please don't lose your mind over this. And you all know why. It just is another aircraft. It's weird looking, but it doesn't do a lot. And again, the Stuka D-5, while historically neat, you already have a Stuka. You already have the option of getting this one with the 237s, which is much more consistent at being able to take out targets, and you don't need to wait 60 seconds to do something cool. This one, on the other hand, it's just another plane. I mean, it might as well be any other German ground attacker. It reminds me a lot of the 265, the mediocre gun performance, and then limited bomb capacity. A lot of times you'd end up having to drop 2 on some of those special sites and make sure you got guns on target. Seems familiar, doesn't it? But even the 265 gets 30mm cannons to go after those heavy ground targets. This one just has 220s. Yeah. So, as always, I'm going to try to throw some history at you because I thought this was a little bit interesting. The Stuka actually started its initial designs and was born from an initial design called the JUA-48, otherwise designated as the JUK-47. This aircraft came about and went into trials in 1932 and featured some similar early design characteristics that we eventually saw in the JU-87. However, the JU-87, as we know it now, didn't start production until 1936, but it did continue production through 1944. There is an estimated 6,000 of these aircraft produced, and a lot of people know this thing because of the Jericho trumpets or the ram air sirens that were mounted on one of the legs of the landing gear. Before we talk about the Jericho horn or trumpet, I think it's also important to note that the gull wing design you see on this aircraft actually increased the strength of the overall platform, which allowed it to be able to carry much larger munitions, and was kind of a design principle we saw replicated on several other aircraft, one of the most notable being the Corsair, the F4U. Now, with that said, this aircraft was very good when it first came out. I mean, you're talking about a single engine dive bomber platform. It had a tail gunner, so it was able to have a crew of 2 people. It was able to carry a fairly impressive payload. Obviously, in this design, we're carrying this nuke, but typically it would carry a smaller bomb in the undercarriage and then 2 wing-mounted munitions as well. The whole point of dive bombing being that you increase the accuracy of the rounds because the bomb would theoretically stay in the same trajectory as the aircraft. You would drop and then pull away. It proved very effective in the early stages of the war, but as the war continued, especially the Battle of Britain, what they found is the lack of maneuverability and speed and the weak defensive armament meant that it was very susceptible to being countered by the British defense aircraft, notably, obviously, the Typhoons and Spitfires and yada yada. The point being that this aircraft eventually needed to be escorted by heavy fighters when it made its way across the channel, which meant that it kind of was losing its effectiveness. And in a lot of situations, the German Air Force, Luftwaffe, was favoring the Focke-Wulf 190, and it essentially replaced the Ju-87 in much of its roles. Not to say that this thing was completely useless. They still used it periodically throughout the war, but it was getting phased out as of late stage 1945. With that said, let's talk about the dive bombing. So with the dive bombing, this thing was carrying the Jericho trumpet, but the Jericho trumpet was essentially an add-on after the fact. What ended up happening is that the Luftwaffe, usually by inspiration from high command, said, let's throw on this sound device because it'll strike fear into the hearts of our enemy. However, if you were to be flying around idling, this is what you heard most of the time. And I'll tell you, if you're already nervous about crossing the channel and going into a heavily defended island that is hell-bent on protecting their home country and their scrambling fighters against you, I probably don't want to be announcing my presence as I'm idling my way in. And then on top of that, I'm probably already nervous, and most pilots complained that as they were ingressing towards their target, the tensions began to rise, and then as they started to tip the nose over and they started to hear this, they started to get really nervous, and it made things very difficult to drop munitions on a target. So as a result, in future designs of the aircraft, the Jericho trumpet was built into the actual landing gear, but that meant that they had a switch that they could put on it, and they would flip a switch that would essentially block the movement of the blades inside of the device, and you wouldn't have to hear that sound while you're ingressing into the target. And if they wanted to use the Jericho trumpet, they could do so in their dive attacks to strike fear into the hearts of the enemy. It was probably more effective going against infantry than it would be going into a heavily defended nation. So probably a good move for them in the long run. But yes, that is the history and story of the Ju-87. I know a lot of people like to comment that in reality this aircraft was much more maneuverable. They made the aircraft less effective in this game. And while it probably had much better altitude performance, let's be honest with ourselves, the Stuka was not much of a dogfighter in the real grand scheme of things. And as a result, that's why it ended up getting phased out. It just couldn't keep pace. Its early designs came about in the early 1930s. I mean, you look at what the American Air Force was fielding in the 1930s and what they fielded by 1945. All of those things were incredibly obsolete. In all honesty, I think the Ju-87 held up fairly well to be used all the way through 1945 and then have the Focke-Wulf take over. But it still was going to get outdated. And that's why this thing is a ground attacker in this game, because if I were going up against a Spitfire, this thing's toast. It's toast in game. It would have been toast in real life as well. Not to say it couldn't get some lucky shots off. I still don't like the idea that ground attackers automatically have their guns nerfed, and that means that we essentially don't get any auto aim on this thing except for a single degree, and that the dispersion is absolutely huge. I'm fine with the dispersion being wide, but you would think that you would get some basic level of auto aim on this so you can at least defend yourself. The tail gunner on this aircraft, by the way, is only 54 damage a second. It's not terrible. It's enough to be able to get some crits out there, but man, you're getting tore up by a lot of things. And frankly, it just, so many times I've been in battles and this thing just gets wiped off the face of the earth, because if somebody wants to take you out, they definitely will. Oh, be kind to each other out there. And if you get the plane, kudos to you. You'll get this cool paint job that comes with it. It's kind of got like a, what is that, like a Nordic theme to it, but it's only giving you 5% XP. I favor putting on the camouflage because it decreases the amount of damage from AA and then increases my concealment, making it so I can sneak a little bit before everybody shoots me down. But my point being here, I know everybody's really gunning to get this aircraft, but at the end of the day, you're probably not going to fly it that much to begin with. So let's be kind to each other out there, and I wish you all the best of luck. Happy hunting, and as always, I'll catch you on the next one.